Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA board. And one of the major questions I've been getting lately is video quality on these devices because I keep comparing original hardware to the cores themselves on the MiSTer. So what I'm doing in this video is we're going to compare the HDMI video quality and signal from the MiSTer to the analog signal out. We're going to be taking a look at the same game synced up, one being the HDMI, one being the analog, and we're going to talk about the quality in each individual core so much as that the cores that I would play. Before we get too far involved, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But the great thing about the MiSTer with the analog I/O board is that we have more than one option on how to display this. We can use, it's a VGA shaped connector, but it can be VGA, it can be RGB. We can use that connector right there for analog out to any device that we want that'll support the signal. And then of course we have the HDMI cable around the side as well. So it's great that MiSTer gives us all of these different video options, but which ones are going to be best for your use case scenario and which one's going to look better than the other one is going to be pretty subjective. My one suggestion is if you are going to use analog out, get yourself a nice quality cable. You'll see the one that I have right here. I will leave a link to it below. I've tested it with all the different cores I use on my PVMs as well as into my frame MiSTer and capture card. So I highly recommend this cable because on analog video compared to HDMI, cable quality is important. But let's jump right in with our first comparison, and that is the NeoGeo AES. So on the right we have HDMI, and on the left we have RGBS, and I don't know what's going on with this core. It's the only one that exhibited this issue, but the analog signal is changing the color vibrancy, which isn't all that weird because the original Neo Geo AES did a lot of strange things with RGB depending on what revision the actual hardware would be. So even though we're using the MiSTer core in both instances here, it's just a slight difference, and honestly, the one on the right looks too vibrant. I don't get those colors when I'm playing on my PVM. The one on the left, being the RGBS out of the MiSTer, I also don't get that subdued of colors when I'm playing my Neo Geo on my PVM or TV. So honestly, neither one of these is 100% perfect. And what I will do here is I'll just pause it so you can see the colors. Somewhere in between these two images is what I think the Neo Geo AES and MVS should look like, and it's just a little strange thing. As you can see there on Annie's clothing, on the right with the HDMI signal off the MiSTer, it is quite red and vibrant. On the left, it's 100% orange. Somewhere in the middle, it's actually what it should look like. So whether you use HDMI or analog for the Neo Geo core, you're going to have to adjust your color slightly. But moving over to something like Pulsar, you'll see that they are much closer. The HDMI signal seems to be a little bit too vibrant, and the analog signal seems to lack a little bit of vibrancy. They both look really good, and they're both extremely clear, but neither one is 100% accurate. And of course, that can be fixed through deep video settings, and I will have a video in the future about advanced video options for your MiSTer and different profiles that you can use to get everything looking exactly how it should. But that's the first instance here, comparing the HDMI output of the MiSTer to the analog RGB output to the MiSTer, that we do have a major difference in what they look like. And you'll see as we get into the next set of comparisons, those differences are going to get much narrower. But I wanted to just start with the original comparison that I did, which was the Neo Geo core. And like I said, it's strange that they are so different, but that's just what I found. Now your setup may slightly vary. I've put these into my PVM with an RGB signal, and then I took the signal out of the PVM to get it into a capture card. If you're doing it differently, it may act differently. But jumping right into the Super Nintendo and Mega Man X, HDMI on the right and analog on the left, I would say this is an instance in which the analog video signal is more accurately representative of what you would find with original hardware. The HDMI signal is just a little bit too bright. The intensity just needs to be dialed back a little bit. And of course you can rectify these things in settings. So what I'm comparing is the native output off both, because most people are just going to plug these in and never do anything else. I understand that you can slightly manipulate the image to fix this, and I will go over that in the future. But just out of the box with the analog I/O board, the Super Nintendo core to me looks better in analog. What we're going to do right now is we're going to jump over to Yoshi's Island, another really colorful game. And on the right with that HDMI signal, the intensity is just a little bit too much. The brights are too bright. Moreover, on the left, this is what Yoshi's Island to me should look like. The greens are a little bit darker, the yellows are a little bit more yellow, the whites aren't pure white, and that's something that you never really saw on a Super Super Nintendo with, SCART out or JP21 out, the brights weren't as vibrant as you're seeing with the HDMI signal. And like I said, both of these look incredible and neither one is subjectively wrong or bad. It's always just going to be to your eye what you think looks better, especially when we get to things like analog video. There is so much deviance between setups, you're really going to have to decide what you like better. But the great thing is, no matter how you play, the Super Nintendo core, HDMI, or analog, it's going to be an absolutely amazing experience. So now over to the PC Engine. This to me looks identical. I honestly cannot tell much if any difference between Analog RGB out and HDMI out. The reds are the same red, the intensity is the same intensity. I would say that the only slight difference I see is in the life bar. It's slightly more orange on the left with Analog out and it's slightly more red with the HDMI out. But honestly, with all of these comparisons, what I found was the PC Engine cores were the closest to identical across digital versus analog video signals, which is to say the people that made these cores did an excellent job of dealing with color accuracy across both options. And moving over to the next game, you're going to see that on HDMI the green is slightly brighter, but honestly we're talking about tiny deviations in the overall shade and image color here. So basically, no matter what option you pick for most of the cores, PC Engine, UCard, and CD included, there is going to be a slight, if not imperceivable, difference in the video quality. And that's not to say that one is better quality than the other. Both the analog RGB signal and the HDMI out are spectacular and they are pristine. And moving over to the Sega CD with Sonic CD, this is even closer compared to the PC Engine. Again, the HDMI signal might be 1 to 2% brighter, but it's hard to say whether or not that's actually the hardware or that's the capture setup, because getting the analog video captured from the MiSTer can be quite complex. What I'm doing is I'm taking the RGB signal, I'm putting it into my PVM, and then I'm taking that same RGB signal out of the PVM with the output BNC connections. I then put that into the FrameMiSTer, and the FrameMiSTer goes into my Elgato HD60S capture card. So the amount of wires and hardware even to get these captures done with analog is quite intense. And like I said, any one of those pieces of hardware could be doing something ever so slightly to the image. But that's what happens when you deal with analog video signals, is that the cable quality, the connection quality, there's so many different variables that can affect it. So the fact that these two are so close to each other really tells us how good the MiSTer hardware is and how well the cores have been written to keep things so closely. And Splatterhouse, again, this is one game in which the analog signal looks closer to what it should, because if you see those monsters in red, I really don't know what their names are, they're a little bit too bright. And again, you could just dial back the HDMI brightness on the MiSTer. There are video settings to take care of that, but again, everything is so incredibly close. I was really hoping and expecting to see deviations between what the video signal would be on MiSTer HDMI compared to analog, and what I'm really surprised is outside of the Neo Geo core, how close they really are. It's not easy to see, and once this gets compressed for YouTube, it may be even harder to see. But the great takeaway is, no matter how you're playing your MiSTer analog or HDMI, the video quality is absolutely amazing. All of the analog signals to me look slightly better than the source hardware. The only thing I need to figure out is what is going on here with the Neo Geo core. I'll actually put a GitHub ticket up for this because I can't explain why the colors are so different, because all the connections are correct. If I was missing the red or the blue or the green lines, this wouldn't be getting any sort of signal whatsoever. It would be completely wrong. So I'm just curious why this is. Has anyone else encountered it? Leave me a question or a comment below if you have had color issues with the Neo Geo core on analog, because I would be really curious to hear what's going on. Because the weird thing is, it appears with these colors on my PVM, so I know it's not the capture setup, I know it's not the FrameMiSTer. The colors are odd straight from the actual MiSTer itself. But that's basically my takeaway. Whether you're using analog RGBS, whether you're using VGA, whether you're using HDMI, the video quality on the MiSTer cannot be beat. It's some of the best and easiest to deal with that I've encountered. So, like I said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'd love to hear what your video setup is and what you've kind of found with MiSTer. Like I mentioned earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribing, that notification bell definitely helps us out. We will be back next week with another MiSTer video, and we'll have videos on other topics throughout the week. But yeah, no matter how you slice it, HDMI, RGB, this is an amazing piece of hardware and definitely buy one. Bye bye.